How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to Fireside Knicks with your boys, Alex and Ryan. So today we're talking about Julius Randle. I know a lot of people have been back and forth on this. Should the Knicks be trading Julius Randle? What is his value to the team? What kind of piece, what is his part in the equation here of the roster this team has built? Personally, I don't think the Knicks should be trading Julius Randle. I know, you probably read the headlines and say, why are these guys think he should trade? I don't think they should trade Julius Randle. I actually think he plays a pretty important part on this team. I actually think that his role is going to change with Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby now kind of starting on this roster full time. Randle, who was averaging 5 3-point attempts last season before the injury, doesn't need to be a perimeter shooter. He can just live in the paint, be physical, drive to the basket, wear down opposing centers. I don't think that trading him makes this team any better unless it's for a really great player. But let's say you go out and get, you kind of mentioned in the last episode the idea of what if you could get Kevin Durant or something like that. You lose the physicality of Randle, you lose the rebounding. Kevin Durant, obviously one of the best scorers in history of the NBA. So, you love him there, but he's also a lot more expensive. He's $20 million more expensive than Randle, and we don't necessarily have the money unless you're offloading some other salaries. So it would be really difficult to make a move like that. Also, keep in mind, Randle's on the last year of his deal. He has a player option next year at $30.1 million, about that. He's definitely opting out of that contract because he can get a deal worth $40+ million per season. He's gone. The Knicks are probably going to lose him in free agency unless the salary cap raises exponentially and they find ways to keep him, or they just don't want to lose him. It depends on what kind of season he has. But first and foremost, Ryan, do you think that this is the last year that Julius Randle's with the Knicks, or do you think he takes a pay cut similar to Jalen Brunson? How do you think the future of this team looks with Randle? Do you think he is here long term, or do you think this might just be his last year?
That's a really good question. You see, I'm not sure what the future looks like for Julius Randle because, if he's really good, let's say, right, kind of the player he was, after that really slow start he had last year, then, it's kind of hard to justify losing him. Another thing that's important here is what does he do in the postseason? I think the last thing that he needs to check off his list to really cement himself as one of those players, because he's a 2-time All-NBA forward. He's a 3-time All-Star, right? He's one of the better players, really in Knicks franchise history, right? He's pretty damn good relative to what we've had, in really the history of the franchise, especially recent history. I don't think trading Julius Randle makes much sense unless, as I mentioned earlier, if you can get the kind of player that legitimately makes you just clearly the best team in the league, right? If you had Kevin Durant, I think you're clearly the best team in the league. Now, financially, you have to account for that too, and that's something I obviously didn't account for when I mentioned it. But that's also not happening, right? The Yankees, the Knicks aren't trading for aren't trading for Kevin Durant. That's not happening, especially right now. That's just not happening. So, I don't see a guy currently on the market. I know some people float around Jaren Jackson Jr. and look, great defender, but the Knicks are already really good defensively. I'm not saying you can't always get better, but they need to have a guy who can put the ball on the floor and score. You know what I mean? They need that. They need that secondary ball handler. They need that guy who, next to Jalen Brunson, can really be that high-level scoring option, and that's exactly what Julius Randle has been since bringing in Brunson. For the last 2 years, he's been remarkable. So I think a lot of the underappreciation for Julius Randle comes from the fact that, look, his postseason resume hasn't been great, but do not get it twisted. This is a guy who plays a very modern game. I know I've heard people call him an inefficient ball stopper, and it's first and foremost, he's an excellent playmaker, and he's a very willing playmaker. Sometimes he's a little too willing to make a pass, and yes, he's turnover prone. That's kind of what you're getting with Julius Randle, right? There is a lot of volatility here. But it is also a player who, as you mentioned, brings down boards, is very physical, is a multi-level scorer, right? He can shoot at least a league. He can get to a respectable shooting clip. He has gravity at the perimeter. And Alex, I think the big thing here everyone's kind of just missing out on is 24-8. 24-8 every night, dude, that's awesome, right? Getting 24-9 and 5, that's awesome. On league average efficiency, that's sick. That's objectively awesome. He got so much better once we got Anunoby. I'm really excited for what he can do this season. He's had, in 3 of his last 4 years, he's been truly an excellent basketball player, and that doesn't get talked about enough.
Healthy. Last year was a freak injury, of course, against Miami. They always tend to do that. And then the previous 3 seasons, he was over 70 games per year. This is a guy that adds to the equation of health. The Knicks have been really injury prone in the past, as you guys probably are aware. Now you have Bridges, who plays over 70 games every season. You have, of course, Brunson, who played 77 last year. You have Randle, who's played over 70 games in 3 or 4 seasons, barring that freak injury. This is a team, and Anunoby is a little bit volatile in the health department, same with Mitch, but DiVincenzo's pretty healthy, and Josh Hart's really healthy. Like, they have a much better situation going on right now. With that being said, I just don't think that Randle moving him adds anything to this team. Like, if you go and you're like, I know people have talked about Karl Anthony Towns, and he's going to be really great from the perimeter, and he's obviously a tremendous basketball player, but he's making like $25 million more than Randle. We can't afford to pay him unless you're going to offload another salary. Like, you probably have to offload Randle and then like Mitchell Robinson just to get clear the salary space that's enough for Karl Anthony Towns, and then you're down a center. I think that Randle's play style, and people will say he's a ball stopper, right? The Knicks play with one of the slowest paces on offense in the league, right? Like, this is when he was injured, they didn't take much of a big change. Like, they weren't suddenly like this big transition basketball team, and if they had Obi Toppin flying over top, like, it's not the game that they were playing. Brunson was slowing things down, controlling the ball, finding his route to the basket, drawing in defenders, then kicking the ball out and rotating the ball around. This team was not a fast-paced team by any means. So like the idea that like Julius Randle stops the ball does not matter to me. The only thing I am concerned about is him not passing the ball. You know what I mean? He's not going to slow the offense down to that degree, but he's going to sometimes miss those passes. I do think that there is sometimes a liability there. At the same time, the one thing that I think Randle's biggest flaw was in the past was his clutch factor. He was not clutch. In the fourth quarter, with a minute left and you need to score a couple points, he was a lot of times a detriment to that equation. He was not a good player when the Knicks needed him to score baskets and those shots with a couple seconds left. The good part is they don't need him to do that anymore, right? It's Jalen Brunson's team now. It's Jalen Brunson's 2-minute drill. He's the guy that you want the ball in his hands at all moments. What you ask of Julius Randle, get in position to rebound. Get in a spot where you and Mitch or whoever's playing center can get in there and make an impact as a rebounder, get an offensive rebound, give your team another chance, put back a dunk. I don't know. It could be any different variety of positive outcomes that Julius Randle can provide this team. But 5 shots from 3, I want that down to 3 per game. 3 shots from 3 per game, because that means if he's shooting 30%, which he was at 31%, he's hitting one of those 3, right? You don't need him taking inefficient shots just because he wants to shoot 3-point attempts. That's why you have Bridges. That's why you have Anunoby. That's why you have Dante DiVincenzo. Those are the guys who are really, really efficient from 3-point range. So, I'm thinking about how to maximize Julius Randle instead of minimize him. And it's using his physicality, wearing down opposing big men, rebounding, being aggressive, driving to the basket, picking up fouls. Like, Randle's going to be an asset when it comes to targeting interior guys and drawing fouls from them, using that physicality to get those calls. If you put early, those centers in early foul trouble, you have a massive advantage now because your wings are bigger, your power forward's a big guy, Mitchell Robinson can get in there and make an impact, or whoever's his backup, or complement rather. Brunson's going to be able to maneuver around backup centers a lot more than starters. Like, Julius Randle's game here can be to collect fouls, be aggressive, wear down opposing interior defenses, and he forces defenses to collapse in. And when you force defenses to collapse in, those wings, OG, Mikal Bridges shooting at like 38+%, 37+%, you're going to have extraordinary production on the wing and from perimeter shooting. So, I'm really excited to see what Randle can do here. But like, when you look at his kind of role on this team, do you see him more as being this bully ball type of guy inside? I don't really necessarily want him to be playing ISO all the time. In fact, I think it really hurts the team when the ball stops at him and it doesn't really continue progressing into other players and moving it around and getting open, high-efficiency shots. But do you think that Randle's role here should be that bully ball style, like that Giannis kind of just bulldozing ahead type of game?
Yeah, I think the bully ball strategy, I think the ability to establish a force in the perimeter is important because, as you mentioned, let's say, 2 minutes left in the game, you need 2 points from the board, right? Even if Randle doesn't take the shot, if he drives to the basket and identifies an open shooter on the wing, that is a good to great shot to take. That is usually a good to great shot to take, and it's one that is hyper efficient. It's the kind of shot you dream of if you're an offense, right? And then kind of the inverse of that, let's say Brunson's at the top of the key and he's on the perimeter. You can run a pick and roll with Randle. You can, set him up to kind of have him cut into the basket or whatever it may be. He draws so much attention from defenses, and yes, he does struggle sometimes to identify, hey, you're getting doubled, like you got to pass out of this situation. But the fact that he's ever in those situations, there's not a single player on the New York Knicks last postseason outside of Jalen Brunson who could garner that kind of attention, and that's important. And it really baffles me when I see Knicks fans say, oh, well, in the postseason, that's evidence that they didn't really need Julius Randle. No, it's evidence they really needed Julius Randle because they really couldn't do anything if Jalen Brunson didn't create a shot for somebody else. That offense, Jalen Brunson was heliocentric. That entire offense ran through Jalen Brunson, and I don't think that's a productive way to win basketball games. It's cool that Jalen Brunson can average 35 games in a playoff series. It's awesome that he can do that because you know what? You need that kind of hero ball, that kind of heroic kind of superstar who can just kind of anchor your team offensively. But it also reflects poorly on your offensive depth when Jalen Brunson has to take so many shots or Jalen Brunson has to put so many points in order for you to compete in a series. My point really is that Julius Randle provides another guy and another scoring option the Knicks can go to. Mikal Bridges is another guy, another scoring option the Knicks can go to. And now they have a less heliocentric offense, a less one-man show. And Brunson, he's going to get catch and shoot opportunities. He's going to get more open looks. He's going to get, single coverage. He's not going to get doubled every single time. He's not going to get pressured as he crosses the half court. You know what I mean? He's going to have space to operate, and everyone on the court is going to have space to operate. That is the effect having a guy like Julius Randle brings to the table. And development isn't linear, right? Development is always happening. Teams and players are always finding ways to get better. I'm sure Julius Randle is going to find the right way to play with this team because he did that quickly with Anunoby. He did that quickly with Brunson. The only player I feel like he never really truly meshed with was Barrett, but that was kind of because both of them couldn't reliably space the floor. It feels like Bridges, we know he can space the floor. So this feels like a much better fit than I think people give it credit for. And again, Randle's, the attention he draws is so important in any situation, and especially in a playoff environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think that the combo of Randle and RJ Barrett was just poor because RJ was so volatile from three. He was not a great wing. He was really slowing the ball down too. The passing was horrible. The vision was horrible. They always wanted to ISO whenever they got the ball. This team needs to be a team that swings the ball. Lets Brunson find the open looks. Lets Brunson run this offense. I think that the good part about Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart is they understood that, right? They understood that this offense has to run through Jalen Brunson. I hope that Randle understands that too. I think he does. I think they look pretty good during the first half of the year, especially when OG was out there too with them. So I'm not necessarily worried about that by any means. I think that this is a fine team. This is a solid equation that they've built here. Having a nice compliment to Mitchell Robinson would go a long way. I know in the last episode I said I think that if they got Clint Capella and I thought he would start, it was not because I thought that, Mitch is worse than Clint Capella. It's because I want to keep Mitch healthy, right? I want to keep Mitch on this team and not spending 40 games on the injury list and on injured reserve. That's not where you want Mitch to be. So if you can mitigate his minutes, keep him healthy, play him at the right times, that's where my perspective was. But of course, I think Mitch is a tremendous defender. He's a great player, great dude. Love having him on this team. We saw what he did against Joel Embiid in the playoffs. Use him strategically and not randomly. And I think that's kind of where my kind of opinion on Mitch lies right now. He's too good not to have, so you have to play him strategically. Because at this point, you have to expect injury. I know as a fan, you never want to expect that, but he is injury prone objectively. So it's you have to kind of work around that. I imagine you kind of feel in the same boat.
I was just going to add, the best way to, I think, to put it is none of us hope he gets hurt. We want him healthy for 82 games, but it's poor roster construction and poor planning if part of your plan is to bank on him playing 82 games. That just doesn't make sense. It just does. It's like banking on OG Anunoby to play 82 games. You shouldn't do that. Why would any smart team do that to themselves? You just don't, you have. When the Clippers signed Kawhi, they didn't do it going, yep, he's going to play 82 games and he's going to play, 35 minutes a night on 82 games. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the player as well as and be honest about their flaws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You have to be honest about their flaws. So I think that's what we're trying to be objective. And, still, we love this team. We think this is probably our best chance of winning a chip in a long time. But there are some things that the Knicks need to figure out, and there are some minutes they need to figure out how to manage. And I think that's going to be the case with any team. So, always happy to hear your thoughts down below on Julius Randle. What you think his role is going to be this upcoming season. I think we're both in agreement. They don't need to trade him. I don't think they should trade him. I think he fits a nice role on this team. He's excited. He sees this team as a potential real competitor. That physicality down low against Jason Tatum in a postseason situation, you're going to need it. Anunoby guarding him up, Randle on the boards, he can box out. Then you have Mitch, obviously. This is a team that can beat a Celtics roster. This is a team that you need fully healthy in the postseason, and Randle's been historically very healthy. So I think that's definitely an equation that you can't overlook. That's definitely a piece of the puzzle that should be valued. But always happy to hear your thoughts down below in the YouTube comment section. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Knicks episode.